Beneath the surface, ancient predators patrol depths where human presence is merely tolerated, not welcomed. These are moments where celebration turns to terror in seconds. From South African kelp forests to Arctic fjords, these encounters expose the ocean's unforgiving hierarchy. In this video, we'll uncover 6 chilling encounters that reveal the true cost of venturing into their domain. On December 7, 2025, the coastal waters near Gansbaai, South Africa, shimmered under a cloudless sky. The region had earned its reputation as the great white shark capital of the world over the decades, drawing researchers and thrill-seekers alike to its kelp forests and seal colonies. The cold Benguela current swept northward along the coast, creating nutrient-rich waters that supported abundant marine life. Local tour operators had been guiding snorkeling expeditions in these waters for years, though they always warned visitors about the apex predators that patrolled the depths. Isabella Hartmann, 28 years old, had traveled from Munich with her fiancé Liam Foster to celebrate their engagement with an adventure neither would forget. Isabella worked as a graphic designer and had always dreamed of exploring South Africa's legendary coastline. Liam, a software engineer from Bristol, had planned the trip as a surprise, knowing Isabella's fascination with marine life. They had booked a private snorkeling tour that promised views of kelp forests teeming with colorful fish species. The morning departure from the harbor felt perfect, with gentle swells and excellent visibility. The tour guide, a weathered man named Peter who had spent 2 decades navigating these waters, anchored the boat near a kelp forest approximately 300 meters from shore. He explained that the location typically attracted schools of fish, but remained relatively safe from shark activity during morning hours. Isabella and Liam pulled on their wetsuits and adjusted their masks, while Peter reviewed safety protocols. He reminded them to stay close to the boat and avoid sudden splashing movements that might attract unwanted attention. Isabella descended first, marveling at the underwater landscape that stretched before her. Thick kelp stalks swayed in the current like an alien forest, their golden-brown fronds creating corridors of filtered sunlight. Small fish darted between the vegetation, flashing silver and orange. Liam joined her moments later, swimming beside her with deliberate grace. He carried a small waterproof box in his dive bag, planning to surprise Isabella with a second proposal beneath the waves. They had officially become engaged 3 months earlier, but Liam wanted to create an unforgettable memory in this remarkable setting. After 15 minutes of exploration, Liam gestured for Isabella to follow him toward a clearing in the kelp forest. Schools of yellowtail amberjack circled overhead, their movements creating rippling shadows on the sea floor below. Liam descended to the sandy bottom, approximately 5 meters beneath the surface, and positioned himself in a kneeling pose. He fumbled with the waterproof box, working to extract the ring inside while maintaining his balance against the current. Isabella floated above him, enchanted by the gesture and the surreal beauty surrounding them. The fish activity had intensified, with more species converging on the area, possibly drawn by plankton blooms or territorial behaviors. Neither Isabella nor Liam noticed the massive silhouette approaching from deeper water, where visibility dropped to murky green. The great white shark measured approximately 17 feet from nose to tail, a mature female likely weighing over 2 tons. She had been patrolling the offshore waters since dawn, investigating the seal colony situated 2 kilometers south. The sudden concentration of fish activity and the irregular movements of the 2 humans had triggered her predatory curiosity. Great whites possessed electroreceptors that detected the faint electrical fields generated by muscle contractions, and Liam's kneeling motion had created an unusual signature in the water. The shark accelerated with terrifying speed, her powerful tail propelling her upward through the kelp forest. Isabella remained focused on Liam below, unaware of the approaching predator until the last possible second. Peter, watching from the boat above, spotted the distinctive dorsal fin cutting through the water and began shouting warnings, but sound traveled poorly between air and water. The shark struck Isabella from below and behind, her massive jaws clamping onto Isabella's torso with hydraulic force. The impact lifted Isabella completely out of her horizontal position, spinning her sideways as the predator's teeth punctured the wetsuit and penetrated flesh. Isabella's arms flailed instinctively, her regulator torn from her mouth by the violence of the attack. Blood immediately clouded the water, spreading in dark tendrils through the kelp. Liam witnessed the strike from below, his mind struggling to process the nightmare unfolding above him. He abandoned the ring and kicked upward desperately, reaching for Isabella even as the shark began dragging her downward. His hands grasped Isabella's leg, but the predator's momentum proved overwhelming. The shark shook its head violently, a behavior designed to tear flesh from large prey, and Isabella's body jerked like a rag doll in those terrible jaws. Peter dove into the water with a long aluminum pole, joined by his assistant, who grabbed flotation devices and a first aid kit. They reached the scene within seconds, but the shark had already inflicted catastrophic damage. The predator released Isabella momentarily, circling back with the mechanical efficiency of an animal operating on pure instinct. She struck again, this time targeting Isabella's legs, and the force of the bite severed major arteries. Liam continued fighting, punching at the shark's snout and attempting to position himself between the predator and Isabella. The great white seemed momentarily confused by the additional target, her dark eyes rolling back to protect against counterattacks. Peter jabbed at the shark with the pole, striking her gills repeatedly in a desperate attempt to drive her away. The shark finally released her grip and descended into deeper water, disappearing as suddenly as she had arrived. The three men pulled Isabella toward the boat, but her injuries proved unsurvivable. She had lost consciousness within moments of the initial strike, and the blood loss continued despite their frantic efforts to apply pressure. Peter radioed for emergency assistance while his assistant performed CPR, but Isabella showed no signs of life. The journey back to shore took 12 agonizing minutes, during which Liam held Isabella's hand and repeated her name over and over, unable to accept what had occurred. The authorities transported her to the local medical examiner's office. The official report confirmed that she had died from massive trauma and blood loss, caused by multiple bite wounds consistent with a large great white shark. Marine biologists later speculated that the unusual fish activity and Liam's kneeling position had created a perfect storm of circumstances that triggered the predator's hunting response. The incident prompted renewed discussions about shark safety protocols in Gansbai's tourism industry, though experts emphasized that fatal attacks remained statistically rare, despite the region's shark population. Liam returned to Bristol 3 days later, carrying memories of a proposal that had transformed from joyful celebration into incomprehensible tragedy. The ocean had revealed its most fundamental truth. Even in moments of human happiness, nature operated by rules far older and more unforgiving than love. On June 15, 2018, Miami found itself submerged under an unexpected deluge. A tropical storm system had stalled over South Florida, dumping nearly 14 inches of rain in less than 6 hours. The city's drainage infrastructure, already struggling with aging pipes and rising sea levels, buckled under the assault. Streets transformed into rivers, with floodwaters reaching waist-deep in low-lying neighborhoods near Biscayne Bay. The murky brown torrents carried debris from overturned garbage bins, uprooted vegetation, and displaced marine life from the bay's brackish waters. Rafael Mendez, 26 years old, operated a small courier service that specialized in pharmaceutical deliveries throughout Miami-Dade County. He had built his business over 3 years, earning a reputation for reliability even during severe weather. On that morning, Rafael received an urgent request to deliver time-sensitive medication to an elderly customer in Little Havana. The floodwaters had already closed most major roads, but Rafael decided to make the delivery on foot. Wading through the submerged streets with packages sealed in waterproof containers, Rafael parked his delivery van on higher ground near Flagler Street and began his journey through the flooded neighborhood. The water reached his thighs in most areas, forcing him to move slowly while maintaining balance against unpredictable currents. Submerged vehicles created obstacles, and Rafael navigated carefully around overturned trash bins and fallen palm fronds. The floodwater appeared deceptively calm on the surface, but beneath it churned with hidden debris and contaminated runoff from storm drains. What Rafael did not know was that the flooding had displaced several bull sharks from their usual territories in Biscayne Bay. Bull sharks possessed a remarkable ability to tolerate fresh water, allowing them to venture far up rivers and into flooded urban areas. These predators typically measured between 7 and 11 feet in length, with stocky builds and aggressive temperaments that made them among the most dangerous shark species to humans. The murky floodwaters provided perfect cover for their opportunistic hunting strategies. A 9-foot female bull shark had followed the current inland, drawn by the electrical signals of struggling fish, and the vibrations of Raphael's movements through the water. She patrolled the flooded street methodically, her lateral line sensors detecting pressure changes caused by Raphael's legs pushing against the current. The turbid water reduced visibility to less than a foot, rendering the predator effectively invisible. Raphael was approximately 50 meters from his destination when the shark struck. The attack came without warning, as the predator lunged from below and clamped onto his left calf. The force knocked Raphael off balance, plunging him face first into the contaminated floodwater. He surfaced gasping, initially believing he had collided with submerged debris or caught his leg in a storm drain. The pain registered seconds later, sharp and overwhelming, as the shark's serrated teeth tore through his jeans and into muscle tissue. Raphael kicked frantically with his free leg, connecting with what felt like solid muscle and sandpaper rough skin. The shark released momentarily, circling back through the murky water to assess her prey. Raphael struggled to regain his footing, grabbing onto a partially submerged chain-link fence for support. Blood mixed with the brown floodwater, creating dark swirls that disappeared into the current. Neighbors on second-floor balconies witnessed the attack, their screams adding to the chaos. An elderly woman threw a wooden chair into the water while a younger man grabbed a broom handle and rushed down his exterior stairs. The shark struck again, this time targeting Raphael's right thigh. The impact spun him sideways and he went under again, swallowing contaminated water as he fought to surface. The predator's hunting pattern followed the typical bull shark behavior of repeated exploratory bites. Each strike inflicted deep gashes and crushing pressure from powerful jaws designed to pulverize bone. Raphael punched wildly at the shape moving beneath him, his fist connecting with the shark's snout during one desperate swing. The blow seemed to confuse the predator momentarily, buying Raphael precious seconds to drag himself toward a lamppost that rose above the waterline. The neighbor with the broom handle reached the water's edge and began jabbing at the circling shark, his strikes mostly ineffective but creating enough disturbance to alter the predator's focus. Two additional neighbors arrived with wooden planks and began throwing debris into the area, trying to create a barrier between Raphael and the shark. The bull shark made one final pass, her dorsal fin breaking the surface briefly before she descended and disappeared into the flooded canal that connected to the broader street system. Raphael hauled himself onto the lampost's concrete base, his legs bleeding from multiple lacerations. The wounds appeared deep but not immediately life-threatening, though the contaminated floodwater raised serious infection concerns. Neighbors fashioned a makeshift stretcher from plywood and carried Raphael to higher ground, where emergency responders waited with an airboat. The storm's intensity prevented helicopter evacuation, so paramedics stabilized Raphael before transporting him through the flooded streets to a hospital. Surgeons spent 4 hours repairing damaged muscle tissue and blood vessels in both legs. Raphael required extensive antibiotic treatment to combat infections from the contaminated floodwater, and he spent 11 days in the hospital recovering. The incident prompted Miami-Dade County to issue warnings about displaced marine predators during future flooding events, though officials acknowledged the extreme rarity of such attacks. Raphael eventually returned to his courier business, though he refused to make deliveries during flood conditions. The scars on his legs served as permanent reminders of the morning when a routine act of dedication had nearly cost him his life, and when the boundaries between urban civilization and wild predation had dissolved in the murky waters covering Miami's streets. On August 22, 2020, the Kona coast of Hawaii's Big Island basked under intense tropical sunlight. The region's volcanic origins had created dramatic coastlines where black lava rock met turquoise water, forming natural harbors that locals had developed over centuries. Private docks extended from wealthy estates into deeper water, providing access for fishing boats and recreational vessels. Many of these structures dated back decades, their wooden pilings gradually succumbing to marine borers, salt corrosion, and the relentless action of Pacific swells. Hana Lee, 29 years old, worked as an independent marine surveyor specializing in dock and pier inspections throughout the Hawaiian Islands. She had earned her credentials through years of diving experience and structural engineering courses, building a client base that appreciated her thoroughness. On that August morning, Hana arrived at a private property in Kona to assess a dock that the owner suspected had suffered termite damage. The structure extended 40 feet into the bay, with support beams showing visible deterioration near the waterline. The property owner, an elderly gentleman who spent most of the year in California, had inherited the estate from his parents and visited only occasionally. He explained to Hana that the dock had been built in the early 1980s and had received minimal maintenance over the past decade. Hana agreed to inspect the structure, though she warned that sections might be dangerously unstable. She carried a clipboard, camera, and measuring tape as she walked carefully along the weathered planking. The waters beneath the dock harbored abundant marine life. Schools of juvenile fish sought shelter among the barnacle-encrusted pilings, while larger species patrolled the deeper channels beyond. Tiger sharks frequented the Kona coastline year-round, attracted by sea turtle populations and the fish congregating near human structures. These predators, identifiable by their distinctive striped patterns, typically measured between 10 and 14 feet, with powerful jaws capable of crushing sea turtle shells and consuming nearly anything they encountered. A 13-foot female tiger shark had been circling the area for the past hour, investigating the pilings with the methodical curiosity characteristic of her species. Tiger sharks possessed omnivorous appetites and would investigate potential food sources through physical contact, often biting objects to determine their edibility. The deteriorating dock had created an artificial reef effect, concentrating fish activity that attracted the predator's attention. Hana reached the dock's midpoint and knelt to examine a support beam showing advanced rot. She pressed her measuring tape against the wood, noting how easily her finger penetrated the soft surface. The structural integrity had clearly failed, and Hana began photographing the damage for her report. As she shifted her weight to capture a different angle, the plank beneath her right foot suddenly gave way with a sharp crack. Hana plunged through the collapsed section, her body twisting as she tried to grab the remaining boards. She hit the water awkwardly, submerging completely before surfacing in the waist-deep area between pilings. The impact had stirred sediment and disturbed the fish sheltering beneath the dock, sending them scattering in panic. The sudden commotion triggered the tiger shark's predatory instincts, and she accelerated toward the source of the disturbance. The shark struck before Hana could orient herself, its massive jaws clamping onto Hana's left leg just above the knee. The force dragged Hana underwater again, scraping her right arm across a piling covered in razor-sharp barnacles. Pain exploded through her leg as the predator's teeth penetrated her wetsuit and flesh, though the tiger shark's bite appeared more exploratory than committed. The shark released after 2 seconds, backing away to reassess. Hana surfaced gasping, immediately spotting a floating wooden crate that had fallen from the dock during the collapse. She grabbed it desperately, thrusting it between herself and the circling predator. The tiger shark returned within seconds, nudging the crate forcefully and attempting to maneuver around it. Her distinctive striped pattern became visible in the clear water, and Hana recognized the species with horror. Tiger sharks were known for their persistence and unpredictable behavior. The shark struck again, this time targeting Hana's right side. The blow knocked the crate from her grasp and sent debris spinning through the water. Hana's head went under briefly, and she swallowed seawater before surfacing. The predator's rough skin had scraped her forearm during the pass, leaving shallow abrasions that burned with salt exposure. Blood from her leg wound clouded the water, likely increasing the shark's interest. 2 fishermen on a nearby dock witnessed the attack and began shouting, grabbing whatever objects they could find. One threw a fishing rod toward the commotion, while the other grabbed a long stick and began running toward Hana's location. Their movement and noise created additional disturbance, but they remained too far away to intervene effectively. The tiger shark made a third pass, striking Hana's lower leg and spinning more debris into the air. The impact created a wave that washed over Hana's face, temporarily blinding her. She kicked frantically with her uninjured leg, connecting with the shark's flank during one desperate movement. The blow seemed to confuse the predator, whose hunting pattern suggested investigation rather than committed predation. Minutes stretched endlessly as Hana struggled to maintain her position between the pilings, using the broken dock structure as partial shelter. The shark continued circling, making several more investigatory approaches but not committing to another full strike. Each pass left Hana more exhausted, her muscles burning from the effort of staying afloat and defending herself. The fishermen finally reached the collapsed dock area, one of them extending a long bamboo pole toward Hana. She grabbed it with her remaining strength, and they pulled her toward the intact section of the dock while continuing to jab at the water with their sticks. The tiger shark made one final approach before retreating into deeper water. apparently satisfied that the strange object was not suitable prey. The men hauled Hana onto the remaining dock structure, where she collapsed onto the weathered planks, gasping and bleeding. Her leg wounds required immediate attention, though the bites appeared relatively shallow compared to committed predatory attacks. The fishermen called emergency services, and paramedics arrived within 15 minutes to transport Hana to the local medical center. Doctors treated multiple lacerations, bruising, and the barnacle scrapes that covered her arm. Hana spent 2 days hospitalized for observation and infection prevention before being released. The incident effectively ended her dock inspection career, as she found herself unable to work near water without experiencing debilitating anxiety. The property owner demolished the remaining dock structure the following month, citing safety concerns and liability issues. Hana eventually transitioned to land-based structural inspection work, carrying permanent scars and memories of the morning when a routine job had nearly cost her life beneath a collapsing dock in Kona. On December 18, 2021, the South African summer brought perfect beach weather to the coastal region near Gansbaai. The area had developed a complicated relationship with tourism over the decades, balancing economic opportunities from shark cage diving operations against the ever-present reality of predatory great whites patrolling the waters. Local beaches attracted families seeking relief from inland heat, though warning signs reminded visitors of the marine wildlife inhabiting these waters. The cold Benguela current supported massive seal colonies along rocky outcrops, which in turn attracted the apex predators that had made this coastline famous. The Richter family had traveled from Johannesburg to spend their December holiday near the ocean. Klaus and Petra Richter brought their 3 children, Lucas, 12 years old, Emilia, 15, and Matteo, 17, along with Petra's sister and her family. They had rented a beach house overlooking a secluded cove approximately 8 kilometers south of the main town. The location offered privacy and stunning views, though it lacked lifeguard presence. The morning began with typical holiday relaxation. The adults prepared breakfast while the children explored the rocky shoreline, collecting shells and observing tide pools. By mid-morning, the temperature had climbed into the high 20s, and the ocean beckoned invitingly. The water appeared calm, with gentle swells rolling onto the sandy beach. Visibility extended for dozens of meters, and the children begged permission to swim. Klaus surveyed the conditions carefully before agreeing. He noted the absence of other swimmers but saw no immediate danger. The water remained relatively shallow for about 30 meters before dropping into deeper channels. He instructed the children to stay close to shore and within sight. Petra settled into a chair on the veranda with a book, while Klaus joined his brother-in-law, setting up fishing equipment down the beach. Lucas, Emilia, and Matteo waded into the water together, laughing and splashing. Lucas, the youngest, stayed in waist-deep water initially, jumping over small waves. Emilia and Matteo, both stronger swimmers, ventured further out where the water reached their shoulders. The ocean floor consisted of smooth sand with occasional rocky patches, and small fish darted around their legs. A seal colony situated 1 kilometer west had attracted an 18-foot great white shark to the area. The massive female had been patrolling the coastline since dawn, her powerful body cutting through the water with mechanical efficiency. Great whites in this region had learned to associate certain times with seal movements, and morning hours often provided optimal hunting opportunities. The shark's acute senses detected vibrations from the beach, and she altered course to investigate. The predator approached from deeper water, her dark gray dorsal surface rendering her nearly invisible against the ocean floor. Her massive size indicated a mature specimen, likely over 20 years old and weighing close to 2 tons. Great whites in hunting mode could accelerate to remarkable speeds, using surprise to overcome prey before defensive responses could occur. Lucas was adjusting his swimming goggles when the shark struck. The attack came from directly below, the predator breaching partially as her jaws closed around the boy's lower body. The force lifted Lucas completely out of the water before dragging him under in an explosion of white foam. His scream cut off instantly as he disappeared. Blood spread rapidly through the crystalline water, creating an expanding crimson cloud. Emilia and Matteo registered their brother's disappearance with confusion before understanding hit. Emilia screamed and swam desperately toward where Lucas had vanished, while Matteo followed close behind. Their parents heard the scream from shore and looked up to see the churning water and spreading blood. Petra dropped her book and began running toward the waterline, shrieking her children's names. The great white surfaced briefly, Lucas's body still in her jaws before descending again. Amelia reached the area and dove under, driven by pure instinct to help. The shark, already in full predatory mode and likely confused by multiple targets, turned attention to the new movement. She released Lucas's body and struck Amelia with devastating force, her jaws clamping around the teenager's torso. Amelia's arms flailed once before she too vanished beneath the red-stained water. Mateo, now screaming, continued swimming toward his siblings despite the horror unfolding. His teenage brain could not process the need for self-preservation over helping his brother and sister. The shark, her predatory drive fully engaged, attacked a third time. She seized Mateo by the legs and dragged him under with the same terrible efficiency. The entire sequence lasted less than 45 seconds. Klaus and his brother-in-law reached the water's edge and plunged in, swimming frantically toward the attack site. Other family members emerged from the beach house, their screams joining Petra's. The water remained disturbed, with debris and blood marking where the children had been. Two local surfers paddling past the cove witnessed the attacks from approximately 100 meters away and began racing toward shore, shouting warnings. One had a radio and immediately called emergency services. Within minutes, lifeguards from a neighboring beach arrived with flotation devices and a rescue boat, but the shark had retreated to deeper water. Recovery efforts began immediately, though hope disappeared with each passing minute. Dive teams searched the area for hours, eventually locating all three bodies in deeper water. The great white had inflicted catastrophic injuries consistent with predatory feeding behavior, and medical examiners confirmed all three children had died within minutes of the initial strikes. The tragedy devastated the Richter family and the entire Gansbai community. Local authorities closed the beach indefinitely and increased shark monitoring along the coastline. Marine biologists studying the incident noted the attack pattern suggested mistaken identity combined with the shark's proximity to seal colonies. The predator had likely identified the children's surface movements as potential prey, and once the attack sequence began, blood and additional targets triggered continued aggression. Klaus and Petra returned to Johannesburg 5 days later, their lives irreparably shattered. The loss of all three children in a single moment seemed incomprehensible, yet the ocean had demonstrated its fundamental indifference to human tragedy. Memorial services drew hundreds of mourners, and the Richter family established a foundation promoting ocean safety education in their children's names. The secluded beach remained closed for 2 years, a silent testimony to the morning when summer joy had transformed into unfathomable loss, and when 3 young lives had ended in the jaws of nature's most efficient predator. On March 9, 2025, the Gulf of Mexico stretched endlessly under overcast skies, its surface deceptively calm despite the industrial chaos beneath. Oil rigs dotted the horizon like steel sentinels, their platforms rising hundreds of feet above the water, while underwater support structures descended into murky depths. The region had been extensively developed for petroleum extraction since the mid-20th century, creating artificial reef systems that attracted diverse marine life. Commercial diving operations maintained these structures year-round, inspecting pipelines and support beams for corrosion and structural integrity issues. Jordan Blake, 33 years old, worked as a commercial saturation diver for a Houston-based marine services company. He had spent 11 years in the profession, accumulating thousands of underwater hours on oil rigs throughout the Gulf. Jordan had earned certifications in deep-sea welding, hydraulic systems, and emergency rescue procedures. On that March morning, his crew arrived at a drilling platform situated approximately 60 miles offshore to conduct routine pipeline inspections on the eastern support structure. The work environment presented significant challenges. Water visibility in the Gulf typically ranged from 5 to 15 feet due to sediment suspension and plankton blooms. The rig's machinery created constant vibrations and noise, while debris from decades of industrial activity littered the seafloor. Jordan's assignment involved inspecting pipelines at depths between 40 and 60 feet, checking for cracks, loose connections, and biological growth. Jordan descended the access ladder at 8:30 in the morning, carrying inspection equipment and a communication tether connected to the surface crew. The water temperature registered at 71 degrees. He began his inspection methodically, documenting each pipeline section with underwater cameras and measuring tools. Schools of small fish congregated around the rig's support beams, attracted by the barnacle-encrusted metal. What Jordan did not immediately notice was the oceanic white-tip shark circling approximately 20 meters away. The species typically inhabited open ocean environments far from shore, preferring deep water where they fed on squid, fish, and carrion. Oceanic white-tips measured between 8 and 12 feet in length, with distinctive white-tipped fins and a reputation for bold, curious behavior toward unfamiliar objects. Marine biologists considered them potentially dangerous due to their persistence and lack of fear. The 10-foot male had been following fishing vessels in the area for several days, scavenging discarded bycatch and investigating boat hulls. The oil rig's constant activity attracted his attention, and he had been circling the structure since dawn. Jordan's presence represented something new, worth examining through the shark's primary investigatory method: physical contact. Jordan was photographing a corroded pipe joint when he felt a sudden impact against his left side. The blow knocked him sideways into a vertical support beam covered in barnacles, and his shoulder struck the rough surface painfully. He spun around, initially thinking he had collided with floating debris. Instead, he saw the oceanic white-tip circling back, its distinctive rounded fins and white markings clearly visible. The shark approached again, nudging Jordan's air tank with its snout. The impact lacked explosive violence, but carried enough force to unbalance him. Jordan grabbed the support beam for stability, his mind racing through protocols for handling shark encounters. Commercial divers received training for such situations. Though oceanic white-tips rarely ventured this close to drilling platforms, he remained as still as possible, avoiding sudden movements that might trigger predatory responses. The shark seemed unsatisfied and made another pass, striking the wooden inspection pole attached to Jordan's equipment belt. The blow sent the pole spinning into deeper water and stirred up sediment. Jordan's heart hammered as he watched the predator circle, its movements suggesting curiosity rather than hunger, but nonetheless dangerous. A fourth strike came from behind, the shark's rough skin scraping across Jordan's forearm as it investigated his dive suit. The contact felt like coarse sandpaper, leaving shallow abrasions that burned with salt exposure. Jordan twisted away, putting the support beam between himself and the shark, but the predator simply altered course. The rig's machinery activated a hydraulic pump, sending vibrations through the surrounding water. The sudden sound seemed to agitate the oceanic white-tip, and it made two rapid passes. The first struck Jordan's equipment bag, tearing it loose. The second blow caught him across the thigh, bruising muscle tissue through the protective suit. Jordan grabbed a nearby pipe, fighting to maintain position while the shark continued investigating. Surface crew members monitoring Jordan's vital signs noticed his elevated heart rate and breathing. The dive supervisor radioed down, asking about his status. Jordan reported the shark encounter, his voice strained but controlled. The supervisor immediately initiated emergency protocols, instructing Jordan to begin ascending while they prepared retrieval equipment. The oceanic white-tip made 3 more passes as Jordan began his careful ascent, each one striking equipment or brushing against his body with unnerving persistence. One blow knocked his underwater camera loose, sending it tumbling toward the sea floor. Another scraped across his back, the rough skin leaving marks despite the protective suit. Jordan maintained steady breathing and deliberate movements, knowing panic would worsen the situation. After what felt like hours but measured only 7 minutes, the shark finally lost interest and swam away into deeper water, perhaps attracted by other stimuli or satisfied with its investigation. Jordan completed his ascent, following proper decompression protocols despite his desperate desire to reach the surface. The support crew helped him onto the platform where he collapsed onto the deck, exhausted and shaking. Medical evaluation revealed multiple contusions, bruising across his shoulder, thigh, and back, and shallow abrasions on his forearm from the shark's skin. None of the injuries required hospitalization, though Jordan received treatment for minor lacerations and was placed on light duty for 3 days. The incident prompted his company to implement additional shark monitoring procedures for Gulf operations, though officials acknowledged the extreme rarity of oceanic white-tip encounters near drilling platforms. Jordan returned to diving 2 weeks later, though he found himself constantly scanning the murky water for signs of circling predators. The experience had demonstrated the unpredictability of working in marine environments, where industrial operations intersected with wild ocean ecosystems, and where even routine maintenance could transform into life-threatening encounters with curious apex predators. On February 14, 2025, the Arctic fjords of eastern Greenland presented a landscape of stark, frozen beauty. Ice sheets extended for kilometers in every direction, interrupted only by deep channels where dark water remained unfrozen due to geothermal activity and strong currents. The region had attracted scientific interest for decades, particularly regarding climate change impacts on marine ecosystems and the mysterious creatures inhabiting these frigid waters. Research stations dotted the coastline, supporting international teams studying everything from ice core samples to deep-sea biology. Svenja Muller, 34 years old, worked as a marine biologist specializing in Arctic fish populations and their adaptation to extreme cold. She had earned her doctorate and spent 6 years conducting fieldwork in polar regions. Svenja's current project involved monitoring underwater sensor arrays that tracked water temperature, salinity, and marine life movements. The data collection required periodic diving to retrieve memory cards, clean equipment, and verify sensor calibration. The February weather presented brutal conditions. Air temperatures hovered around -18 degrees Celsius, with wind chill dropping the effective temperature much lower. Water temperature measured just above freezing at -1 degree Celsius, requiring specialized dry suits, thermal undergarments, and careful dive planning. Svenja's support team included 2 surface crew members who monitored her dive from a heated shelter on the ice edge. Svenja descended through a hole cut in the ice shelf at 9:15 in the morning, tethered to the surface by safety lines and communication cables. The water clarity surprised her despite the dim light filtering through the ice above. Arctic waters often exhibited remarkable visibility due to minimal sediment and plankton during the winter months. She could see 30 meters in most directions, observing underwater ice formations and rocky outcrops. Her dive plan called for reaching a sensor array positioned 40 meters beneath the surface, attached to a metal frame anchored to the rocky bottom. Svenja descended slowly, equalizing pressure and checking her equipment at regular intervals. The cold penetrated even through her insulated dry suit. The underwater environment felt alien and silent, broken only by her breathing and occasional creaking from shifting ice. Greenland sharks inhabited these waters year-round, representing one of the few apex predators adapted to extreme Arctic conditions. The species grew slowly and lived extraordinarily long lives, with some specimens estimated at over 400 years old. They typically measured between 12 and 18 feet in length, with sluggish movements that conserved energy. Despite their slow metabolism, Greenland sharks were effective scavengers and predators, feeding on fish, seals, and carrion. A 16-foot female had been patrolling the fjord for several weeks, following seal populations and investigating human activity near the research station. The species possessed poor eyesight, was often afflicted by parasitic copepods, and relied heavily on smell, electroreception, and detecting water movements. The shark's massive size had earned them a fearsome reputation among local communities, though documented attacks on humans remained extremely rare. Svenja reached the sensor array and began her work, removing protective covers and extracting data storage devices. The metal frame showed significant ice buildup, and she used a specialized tool to chip away frozen deposits. Her movements were deliberate and careful to preserve the sensors and avoid overexertion. The Greenland shark approached from deeper water, drawn by vibrations of Svenja's tools against metal and electrical fields generated by her equipment. The predator moved with surprising stealth despite its massive bulk, gliding through the water like a gray ghost. Svenja remained focused on her task, unaware of the enormous shape materializing from the murky depths. The first contact came as a gentle nudge against Svenja's dive sled, the portable platform she used to carry tools and equipment. The impact rocked the sled sideways, causing several items to shift. Svenja grabbed the frame instinctively, thinking she had bumped an ice formation. She looked down and saw the massive shark circling beneath her, its pale gray skin and blunt snout unmistakable. Her breath caught. The female circled back and nudged the dive sled again, this time with more force. The impact threw Svenja against the metal frame, and her forearm scraped across an exposed bolt, tearing through the dry suit's outer layer. The sharp pain registered immediately, though the extreme cold numbed the injury quickly. Svenja forced herself to remain calm, remembering her training about Arctic predators. Sudden movements could trigger aggressive responses, and her bulky equipment made rapid escape impossible. She maintained her position on the sensor frame, watching the shark complete another slow circle. Its movements suggested curiosity rather than hunger, but the creature's sheer size made any contact dangerous. The shark returned for a third pass, bumping the sled hard enough to dislodge it from its anchored position. Equipment scattered into the water, and Svenja grabbed for her tools while maintaining her grip on the sensor frame. The predator's rough skin brushed against her leg, leaving abrasions through the protective suit. Each contact felt like being struck by a slow-moving vehicle. Surface crew members noticed Svenja's elevated stress levels through her vital sign monitors and radioed for a status update. She reported the Greenland shark encounter, keeping her voice steady despite her fear. The dive supervisor instructed her to begin ascending immediately. The shark made 2 more investigatory passes as Svenja prepared to ascend, each one nudging her or the equipment with unsettling persistence. One strike rocked her hard enough to loosen her grip on the sensor frame. The predator's pale eye passed within inches of her faceplate during one approach, the parasitic copepods attached to it clearly visible. Svenja began her ascent, moving deliberately while the Greenland shark continued circling below. The predator followed her upward for approximately 10 meters, before losing interest and descending back toward deeper water. Its massive tail swept slowly as it disappeared into the murky depths. She reached the surface after a carefully controlled ascent, emerging through the ice hole where her support team waited. They hauled her onto the ice shelf immediately, checking for injuries and signs of hypothermia. Svenja's forearm showed a deep scrape that had penetrated the dry suit, and she had multiple bruises across her legs and torso. Medical staff cleaned and bandaged the forearm wound, administered antibiotics, and monitored Svenja for delayed hypothermia symptoms. She spent the remainder of the day in the heated station recovering. The incident prompted a review of dive safety protocols, though scientists acknowledged that interactions with Greenland sharks remained unpredictable. Svenja completed her research contract 3 weeks later, but declined future assignments requiring Arctic diving. The memory of that massive shape materializing from the depths, and the helpless feeling of being investigated by a creature older than most human civilizations, stayed with her permanently. She transitioned to laboratory-based marine biology research. The scars on her forearm served as permanent reminders of the morning when scientific curiosity had brought her face to face with one of the ocean's most ancient and enigmatic predators.